as of January 7th. So next week, Canadians coming back to Canada from traveling will have to have a negative COVID-19 test before boarding their flights to return home to Canada. That was announced just earlier this hour. So for more on this soon-to-be introduced travel requirement, I'm joined by Transport Minister Marc Garneau. Thank you very much for joining me today. I appreciate it.
My pleasure, Hannah.
So what day, we said that the testing rules will be introduced on January 7th. When it comes to that, if someone doesn't have a negative PCR test when they arrive at the airport, will they or will they not be allowed onto their flight?
Well, there's two possible outcomes. One is if they haven't got the test result and there are clinics available, they will have to reschedule their departure because they won't be allowed on board. If, on the other hand, they can demonstrate, and we're looking into locations where flights come back to Canada, whether there are clinics in place, if they can demonstrate that there was no facility, then they can be admitted on board. But when they come back to Canada, they will have to go into quarantine, as all people coming back to Canada will have to go into quarantine. But in their case, they will have to go into a Public Health Agency of Canada facility at their arrival destination for the 14 days of the quarantine. Okay, so is this new rule about these new rules, is it about the government, hoping that this will, deter people from traveling during this pandemic? Well, let me say, Hannah, from the beginning, in fact, the 13th of March, we put out a directive saying, please don't travel if you don't absolutely have to. And that's been our position for 9.5 months. We've also put in place a 14-day quarantine, which has worked well, and for all passengers returning to Canada. However, as you know, recently there was a variant of the COVID virus that was detected in the UK, and it has arrived in Canada. And so we're adding additional measures now. One of them is the test that we've just talked about. Another one is that we're going to strengthen our enforcement of the 14-day quarantine period, because the vast majority of Canadians are following that quarantine the way it's supposed to be followed, but a few are not. And we are going to reinforce our verification measures to make sure that people are following it. And in fact, if you don't follow it and you get caught at it, there are very serious penalties involved that can involve not only very large fines, but also possibly imprisonment. So it is very serious. Right. So what I take from your answer there is to keep Canadians safer, but hoping people don't travel during this pandemic. But it doesn't seem to be deterring everybody. Let me play a clip from you. This is a woman who we spoke with earlier, who's been going to Barbados every year since the 1970s. And these new rules, which we told her about, it's not stopping her. Take a listen.
There's always a risk, no matter where and when you travel. Myself, my friends, my family, we've all been good here. We've followed the rules. We've quarantined. We haven't got together. So I think we can do that in another country, especially one who's taking care of their people too.
Your reaction to that?
Well, my reaction to that is that the vast majority of Canadians have worked very, very hard to try to follow all of the rules and all of the advice that we have put out to try to bring an end to this pandemic. It is literally a very, very large team effort. And it is important that everybody try to follow those rules. When you go abroad, there is a chance that you're going to bring that infection back to Canada. It could be a variant of the virus. And that's unfortunate, because when that happens, there's a risk that you may infect other Canadians. So we're encouraging people, and we will continue to repeat the message. With most people working hard to bring this pandemic to an end, we hope that everybody is going to follow the rules. And that includes not going abroad if you don't absolutely have to do it.
So what would you say to that lady that's still going to Barbados?
Well, with all due respect to that lady, she may feel that she's not taking additional risk, but she is exposing Canadians to additional risk when she's going to go to a holiday place, if it's for a holiday, and the possibility that when she comes back, she may unwittingly bring that infection back. It's all a question of probabilities, but we need to be as safe as possible, and that applies to all Canadians.
Let me ask you this. We spoke with the Airline Association. They represent the big airlines across Canada. They say the government blindsided them with this announcement. Why didn't you consult beforehand with them?
We've done a lot with the airlines in the past year, and they've reacted very well. For example, making masks compulsory on board, temperature checks, asking questions from passengers. Listen, this is something that we need to put in place. We need to do it expeditiously, and we have the next 7 days to make sure that it will all be in place, not only for Canadian airlines, but also for all of the foreign airlines that fly into Canada, the Lufthansa, the British Airways of the world. All of them are used to making changes because of the COVID pandemic, and I'm sure that Canadian airlines will respond very well as well.
Well, they're not responding very well. In fact, they say they've been pushing the federal government for the past 6 months to implement testing at airports. And now they're saying, look, we're left with 1 week to implement this. And they say it's going to cause mass confusion at airports. That doesn't sound very good.
Well, I know that we've been talking with the airlines, and they will rise to the occasion on this new requirement for pre-departure testing from when you're coming back from abroad. On the issue of testing on arrival in Canada, we are doing pilot projects at the moment and also following other projects that are underway in airports across the country. And we are looking at that. That is something that we feel we need to look at to see if we can come up with a protocol and a testing method that is reliable, that may possibly one day reduce the quarantine period from the existing 14 days. But we're not there yet. But we are working on that. So we are working with the airlines, and I want to commend the airlines. They've had to react to sudden situations very quickly, and they have done that very well in the past year.
Now, I don't have a lot of time, but I want to ask you this because some airline workers are concerned about this. They are concerned, how did they know that that piece of ID or that negative test shown to them by travelers is real or counterfeit?
So one of the things that we're trying to do is to provide information on the locations where testing is provided in the different foreign countries. So we're working to try to get that information. At the same time, counterfeiting unfortunately sometimes happens, and you can't totally cover every base. But we think that there's a good chance that our agents in these different airports abroad are going to be able to recognize the genuine article, if I can put it that way.
Okay, Minister Marc Garneau, I want to thank you for breaking this down, giving us more information on that. We really appreciate your time today. My pleasure, Hannah. Happy New Year. Yeah, Happy New Year to you and to your family as well. Marc Garneau is Minister of Transport.